You know, every deck has a format that they do well in, maybe Premium or V Premium. Between these two respective formats that take advantage of the majority of their cards, I want to discuss a deck that I believe is okay in V. It's really popular in Premium, but we'll be talking about Daihouzan and the deck I built for it in V Premium. Now, Daihouzan is a deck that is very successful in Premium. Its ability, along with the effect of the G units that we have in Premium for Nubatama, make up for all of its flaws that we have in V Premium. But I wanted to see the difference in the formats, just give the deck a try. And over the past 2 weeks, I've been able to accumulate a list of cards that I believe definitely help Daihouzan in the V Premium format for you to enjoy the deck. I don't think the deck is meta at all. I think that Premium is the format that it's just meant for. It has the stuff to make up, again, for the flaws of this deck. But I do believe that Daihouzan is a really good fun deck to try in Nubatama. It definitely has an annoying gimmicky playstyle that your opponent has to play around. And you still maintain the advantage of the Nubatama cards that they have in V that makes the deck good in Premium. Therefore, when we head over to camera 2, we can break down the differences between Premium and V Premium and discuss what Daihouzan can do with the support that we've replaced it with. And if you guys enjoy seeing deck profiles like these, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Do not forget to hit that notification bell so you guys are always up to date on my newest videos coming out. Alright, so you guys, get the deck profile started off with. We are playing 4 copies of the man, the myth, the legend, Sword Saint of Invincibility, Daihouzan. Sword Saint of Invincibility, Daihouzan has the following effect. Auto Vanguard Circle. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards, return it to their hand until the end of that battle. This unit gets 5,000 power and drive +1. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, and they have 1 or less rear guard, this unit gets power +10,000, critical +1. Auto Vanguard Circle. When your opponent's normal unit is placed on rearguard circle during their turn, if your opponent's hand has 4 more cards, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discards it. Now, the first effect is really powerful. It sets up for the second ability like the rest of this deck will do. You'll be able to accumulate the additional 5,000 power +1 drive and bounce one of your opponent's units back to hand. Now, this is actually really important for the deck, as in this version of Nubatama for Daihouzan, you don't really draw a lot of cards to your hand. You're going to be acquiring a lot of your additional cards via Daihouzan's triple drive, which is the best way to draw cards because you activate the drive trigger effects of your trigger units, as well as the fact that once you hit grade 3, or your opponent does, you'll get the critical benefit and the power as well. Which means that Daihouzan by himself will be a 27,000 powered Vanguard, double crit, triple drive every single turn. But the second effect is what we're here for. Now, this ability means that every time your opponent makes a normal call during their turn, they have to continue to discard until they have a minimum of 3 cards in hand. This effect is actually really annoying for a lot of decks, because the most important thing that I've realized when playing Daihouzan is that his ability keeps your opponent's card advantage always in the neutral. That means that decks that already had an issue acquiring cards to their hand, using effects to draw to self-replace units, they're not getting any sort of advantage because they're always going to have to discard what they draw back from what they're calling if they have 3 or more cards in their hand. Keeping your opponent in neutral card advantage helps you with a lot of things. It helps you map out your opponent's hand, meaning you'll know what cards are in their hand based off what they're discarding. It assists you also with your attack patterns, because by knowing what shield they have in their hand, you're able to plan around Daihouzan's 3 attacks. And because you only have 3 attacks and the attack is the Vanguard with the critical on it, you know that 9 times out of 10 this will always get PG'd. And because this will always get PG'd, you have 2 other attacks to focus around with, or at least use 1 to finish, 1 to use to set up for the ability of Daihouzan to get the second effect off, or just use like push or pressure your opponent. For Manix grade 3, I played 2 copies of Sure Stealth Dragon Fuzin Congo. Now, Sure Stealth Dragon Fuzin Congo is one of this deck's finishers. Beatdown with Daihouzan, the minusing cards from hand, is very helpful for the strategy. But Fuzin Congo, being the finisher that I chosen for this deck, came down to a bunch of playtesting and realizing that despite the critical, the drive, the 3 attacks, the messing with the hand, there's no actual way of beating your opponent. Daihouzan has 3 attacks and your opponent will plan out for all of them because it's going to be the same thing every single turn. So dropping something that like helps you guarantee a finishing attack on the opponent actually helps you win games. And out of all the finishers or the Battle Door cards that Nubatama has, a lot of them just did not work. You can't set up for the grade 3 that gets Sentinel and Crit. You can't take advantage of Jamie Congo because it kind of doesn't work that well with Daihouzan if you want to, keep messing with your opponent. It is an option, but it doesn't like close out games You're just going into jamming, they play around it and do what they want to do. You go into Daihouzan, then you rebuild their hand back up, and then you use Daihouzan to hopefully get the winning blow. It does work, but it's not as consistent as just being like on ride, Fusen Congo, you're at 5, I'm at 5. This gets big and just swing for the win. Moving on to the grade 2s, I played 4 copies of Swordmaster of Daihouzan. Now, Daihouzan is a part of a ride chain, and this is one of the cards in the ride chain. This unit is actually very important for the ride chain for its 2 effects. So the first ability is one of the abilities to choose one of your opponent's rear guards and bounce it back to their hand. He'll acquire 10,000 power, making him a really good beat stick. But then the second ability does come up in Daihouzan because a lot of people know that this deck will bounce back a lot of their rear guards. So most players will start rushing you in the early game. This effect states that when rode upon by a grade 3, if your opponent has 3 or more rear guards, your Vanguard gets +1 drive, +1 crit. So your Daihouzan turn with this card maintains all the advantage you would have got on the second turn, but now if you're going second, your Vanguard is swinging 27, 4 drive checks, and triple crit. This one, if you go first, is triple crit, double crit with 4 drive checks. So the advantage of this card is just the fact that it's one of your units that bounce backs up to your opponent's hand. It's a good ride target to go into if for whatever reason you have to go into this, or in the worst of case, or if you're on Daihouzan. For my next grade 2, I am playing 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Scion Geki. Now, before I discuss Scion Geki, I do want to talk about one card. Originally, this was Tamahagane, but the reason why we stopped playing Tamahagane in this deck is because Tamahagane does nothing. The first effect is good to get another rear guard off your opponent's hand. However, what I've discovered is that because your opponent's hand on at least going into your turn when Tamahagane attacks will never be low enough to get that power, that card becomes a 9k vanilla that just does something for 1 turn, and then it's just a 9k beat stick you throw at your opponent every single turn. And against force decks, that becomes really annoying to deal with because the numbers you make in this deck are already kind of low. So therefore, your advantage needs to come from minusing your opponent's hand and annoying them with Daihouzan's ability to continuously minus cards from their hand until you know what they have and then build your attack pattern based around that. Scion Geki does that. This is your Nubatama promo ride cycler. It has the effect of all of them where you'll discard it, you check top 5, you add a grade 2 or less to your hand, and because this is a ride chain deck, you definitely want to find the missing card in the ride chain to keep the deck going, whether it be particularly the grade 1 or the grade 2 to set up for your Daihouzan play. However, the first effect in this deck is actually really important because this is one of the only other cards you have in the deck that actually minuses a card from your opponent's hand. Because Daihouzan is taking all these cards back to your opponent's hand, they're essentially able to take advantage of all these cards defensively speaking. So therefore, when you use up one of your boosters, one of your grade 1 units that bounces the card back to the hand, the Scion Geki will actually force them to discard. Therefore, you now have something in the battle phase or during your turn to actually minus from their hand, so they're not just accumulating all this shield back, so when they guard with Daihouzan, they don't have as many cards to guard with. For my next grade 2, I played 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Magatsu Gale. The on plays draw 1, get additional 6k to become a magic number, gets 4 stacks, then moving into the soul. Bouncing a piece back is pretty standard. It is one of the best supporting Nubatama grade 2s. You value the draw, you need the soul, and sometimes there are certain pieces that do have on place effects you want back to your hand. So in your rush turns, this does help get those cards back to your hand to main your defense as well. And now for the grade 1s. So the first grade 1 will be the first one, Martial Artist of Laceration Daihouzan. This is the grade 1 unit in the ride chain. You need to ride this first all the time, every single time. It's how you find your grade 2 or grade 3 in the ride chain. The second ability is very important as well, as this card will let you bounce another unit back to your hand. So combining all 3 Housans together, that's 3 cards back to your opponent's hand prior to other card effects to mess with them. For my next grade 1, I played 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Antenbrand. Now, Antenbrand is another Nubatama promo that has the ability to rest itself. You bounce one of your opponent's units back to their hand, it restands and gets 3k. Therefore, being a 10k booster and a free unit that does this for free. There's no cost on this, which is really good. Therefore, we can expel other Counterblast and Soul Blast for other card effects that I think are more important to the deck, as well as the fact that this card being a 10k booster is important. Like I stated earlier, the numbers in Daihouzan are not the strongest in terms of your rear guards. Your rear guards don't hit for any magic numbers, so you need as much power as you can accumulate with anything, and a lot of the grade 1s do accumulate power. This does, your other cards do, and then hopefully your triggers will pump up your other units. Therefore, Anson Brand being a free card that bounces something back, giving you essentially altogether 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to bounce back your opponent's stuff is very helpful for this deck. For my next grade 1, I play 4 copies of Stealth Rogue of the Night Sakura Fubuki. This is your countercharger for Nubatama. It's one of the best supporting pieces that they actually have. You use a lot of CB in this deck. Daihouzan uses CB every turn. You'll use Magatsu Gale every once in a while. So Sakura Fubuki being an 11k booster, draws you a card and gives you countercharge. That comes up a lot of the times. Fantastic support piece that helps mitigate one of your resource problems in this deck, which is Counterblast, and helps you keep that resource always available to use for your Daihouzan's effect. Moving on to my next grade 1, I play 2 copies of Stealth Rogue of the Night's Aogita. This is simply a soul charging piece. As you see with a lot of our card effects, Magatsu Gale, Saiyan Geki, Daihouzan, all of these cards use soul, and you want to use all of these cards consistently. Saiyan Geki, with Daihouzan, you want to try to use the same turn, so that's 2 Soul Blast. You use the effect of Magatsu Gale every once in a while, so it's a Soul Blast right there. So we just need something that helps us accumulate soul and never run out so that we can use our other card effects, and Aogita does that. Being a booster that you can use in the early game to put behind your Vanguard makes your numbers better. It also is something that when you're discarding these to filter out for your hand with your other cards, he'll be able to put these back into the soul and start setting up your soul for your other card effects. And for my last grade 1, I'm playing 1 copy of Stealth Dragon Unin. Besides being the second best ride target in this deck outside of Hausen, Unin can help you find your Heal Guardians, your Fusen Kongos, and your Daihouzan to make sure you're riding to the target you want. But the second skill is very important for this deck as well. This is another soul charging piece, but this one lets you put a rear guard that it boosts into the soul and they get 2 rear guards back. Therefore, you're able to return your entire board to your hand in the early game when you're rushing, and I've chosen to put that in to this deck for that particular reason. Since your late game isn't the strongest, your early game, you kind of want to like confirm damage in the early game. The only reason why I'm just playing Unin as 1 for that particular reason, because sometimes it gets awkward. You know, there are times where like you'll have the formation you want and you'll have pieces, but you have to move something into the soul and you are getting a card to do that, and you get the cards back, and it can be a little awkward sometimes. So I'm in between Aogita and Unin. I decided to just play both. So far this has been working for me. However, if you want to make 2 Unin and 1 Aogita, that's perfectly fine. I don't think this card should be cut because this is the only way of like getting the soul without having to do a bunch of steps like Unin does. Therefore, I think that 2-1 is fine, or 2-1 like this is fine as well. And for my triggers in this deck, I am playing 7 Critical with 4 Kurogane, 3 Ganbaku. I play 5 draws with 1 Ashura, 4 copies of Mijin Gakure, and then 4 copies of the Heal Guardian, which is the Mummy Kongo. And my starter is 1 copy of Ushimitsumaru. This concludes today's video, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned throughout the entirety of this deck profile. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below and what you think about Daihouzan in V Premium and my take on it. I've been having a lot of fun with this deck. There's definitely room for improvement. There's just some issues with Nubatama, the clan itself in V. I think this deck definitely found its home in Premium. The support exists to make it better. Unfortunately, in V, this is going to be a solid like tier 2, 3-ish deck until it gets those issues in V Nubatama to be fixed to make it top tier. But with that being said, card fighters, I'll catch you later. Peace.
Ordinary.